Hi everyone, a very warm welcome back to the MEC-TEC garage. We're back on the Westfield today and we've had a parts delivery. Thermostat and housing have arrived. As I said before, I went for a Gates unit. It comes complete with the housing and thermostat together, so that is also all good. It means we've got one of those now because there wasn't one in there before. And also a couple of new O-rings in there. So the first job is going to be to get this bottom half of the housing on the car cleaned up, get it all smooth. And then we can get this new bit bolted on and hopefully that will seal that up nice, get a new pipe on and carry on building up the front end. Let's crack on and get some work done. Right, there we go. As you would have seen there, that is the lower half of the housing all cleaned up. Now, although this has got a black ring around it, where obviously the old rubber ring or old O-ring has sat, it is dead smooth, so that will have no problem sealing again. That'll be absolutely fine. I've cleaned up the temperature sensor inside as well, so that's nice and shiny again, so we get a good reading off of that, and obviously wiped out any gunk that was in this housing. Not that there was a lot, but obviously good to wipe it out while I've got it open. So now we can get the new bit bolted on and get the hose back on and get the thing all sealed up and filled up with coolant again. Let's carry on. Okay, as you would have seen from that bit of time lapse there, the hose and the housing are now all fitted, and as you can hear I've got it running to run it back up to temperature again. I've topped the coolant up, just burping it all through now, make sure the thermostat opens up, make sure that the fan kicks in again. Started up, I think it was third turn of the key, so that's really good. Sounds really nice still. Obviously it hasn't gone anywhere since we last started it, so yeah, it's all good. Topped up the coolant in now. There's quite a lot of air bubbles coming through that bottom pipe as I've been sort of revving it up and down just to sort of get the water pump to get everything moving around again, but this hose is still cold at the moment, so I'm guessing that the thermostat hasn't opened yet. So as soon as that opens up, obviously it'll allow the water to circulate around that bit, get it all hot, and then we should be good. I'll carry on and I'll come back to you in a minute. Rightio, I'll actually run this right up to temperature now. The fan kicks in and we have got 0 leaks from that area, so that is absolutely great. So I'm going to let this all cool down now, actually let everything settle down, then I'll check the level of coolant again in it. The only thing I have noticed is whether it's just because it's not going along and it's not getting enough cooling I should say, the fan once it kicks on doesn't tend to kick off again. That isn't too much of an issue obviously because it's keeping it cool, but I think maybe once the car's going along it probably kick back out again. But just sitting here idling, it hasn't got enough air going through it to make it obviously kick back out again. Maybe that's the reason. So nothing too much to worry about, but it hasn't overheated, it hasn't spurted its coolant out everywhere, it's still all in the tank, so that is a good fix I think. And I say we've not got any leaks from that new housing under there. You can see it's completely bone dry, along with that pipe as well, so that is great. So there is another fix I've just remembered I've got to do before we put the nose cone back on. Now you will remember in an earlier episode that we adjusted this wing on this side because it was sagging where it pulled out of this clamp bolt here. Now it is still a little bit not loose, but it's sort of got a bit of movement, and I've noticed that this side has actually been drilled and it's got a screw going through it, so to obviously stop it pulling sideways that way. So I'm going to do the same with this one. I'm going to drill a hole through the outer metal into the inner, put a screw through it, and that'll obviously stop it being able to go that way, and that will hopefully stop our sagging headlight and wing for good. So I'm going to do that before I put the nose cone back on, because obviously I can get to it a lot easier from where it is now without the nose cone in there. So that is going to be the next job. Let's carry on. Right, after much failing and faffing about, that is now in there, and that is solid, so that is not going anywhere now. So I've got to tighten up this little bracket on here by the looks of it, because that is a little bit loose for the indicator, and the headlight also needs to be tightened up because that is a bit loose as well. Let me zoom you out there a bit because you can't see. There you go, so I've got to tighten that up as well, and then we can get the nose cone back on. Top banana, let's carry on. Right, I've been test fitting this nose cone, and this was an issue that I noticed on the very first episode, that the nose cone actually was touching the front crankcase of the engine. Sorry about my shadow in the way, let me get out of the way. You can see there, and that obviously makes it so that it either has to be spaced up, which it was before, and I've just done again, but that obviously in turn makes it not level with the bonnet, the way the bonnet sits. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to mark 2 marks on here, and I'm going to use either a flappy wheel in a grinder or belt sander, and I'm actually going to recess this bit here to allow it to then go back further that way, to allow it to fit around that front crankcase of the engine. So that is the plan. So I'm going to get that marked up and get that bit buzzed back, so there's a little sort of recess there. Hopefully that should do the trick, and it will stop it vibrating as well. So I'll come back to you in a minute. Right, ignore all what I just said about cutting a notch out of this nose cone. I am officially a blithering idiot, and it's not required. So basically the nose cone is now back on, bolted properly. I've actually taken a spacer out each side in these corners here, and as you can see, there is probably about 3 or 4 mil, probably 3 mil clearance between the engine and the nose cone, so that is absolutely fine. The bonnet sits on there, no problem at all. Now the bonnet does sit low in the middle here, but there's not a lot you can do about that. I think I'm being a bit overcritical because the bonnet isn't that strong in the middle, it's quite flexible, and you can see there it moves quite a lot, so I'm going to go with that. So the next job on the agenda now is the indicator side repeaters. Now I had to disconnect these or take them off the wings when obviously I took the wings off, because otherwise they wouldn't come off. Now these are the wires here, as you can see, and all they were was siliconed actually onto the bottoms under here of these wings to hold them up out the way of the wheels. And you can see the mess and tape as well that was holding them on, so that isn't ideal, and this is just bathroom silicon, so that's no good. So I think I'm going to use the same method again, but I'm going to get a scotch pad and I'm going to rough up underneath the arch under here, so it's got something to key to, and I'm going to use polyurethane sealant rather than silicon sealant, and that should hold it in position. Now the other side, I know from when my friend Aaron had the car, did fall down and rubbed on the wheel, and he wondered why the indicator wasn't working when he took it for MOT, and lo and behold, as I say, the wire had rubbed through, and all they did was tape it up to get it out of the way of the wheel. So the other side needed sorting out anyway, so we're going to get this. I've got a lot of this cleaned up already. As you can see, there's the pile of stuff on the floor that came off of it, which is not ideal. It's taken me a little while to pick all that off, but now I'm going to give it a clean up with some panel wipe and a scotch pad, get all the remnants of the old silicone off, give it a bit of a key, and hopefully what we'll do, we'll use some masking tape or some gaffer tape probably, tape it in place where I want it to be, and then we can hopefully seal it in some way to the underside of that wing where it's not going to move. I'm not really very happy about sealing it to the underside, if I'm honest. I would like to try and find a better solution, so I may change that, but at the moment that's the plan. So I'm going to have a little look at this and I'll come back to you when I've come up with more of a solution. Let's crack on. Okay, we have a slight revision to the wiring plan. Now originally the wiring came through this gap at the front here where all the suspension is. Now I wasn't that happy about that because obviously it's close to the suspension, but also it has to come right from there all the way back to about here, and then up over to this indicator up here, which you can see when my finger is there. That's where the hole is basically. So I'm going to change that slightly and I'm going to reroute the wiring. That's long enough luckily, and I've marked a little cross there, and that is where I'm going to drill a hole for the wire to come through. So that means if I do that, it's literally got to come straight out of there, straight up over the arch into this hole. Now that means as well that it can never foul on the wheels, and it's also far enough away from the exhaust that it's not going to get burnt. So that is the plan. I'm going to drill a hole through there. I'll see if I can get some sort of a rubber bung in there maybe to try and sort of protect the wiring a little bit as well. I may have to go and get one of those. I haven't got one of those in the garage, I don't think. I'll have to look in my hoard of valuable things. But yeah, so I'm going to drill a hole there, feed the wire through, so at least then the majority of it from there to here is out the way of the wheels. I've also got a bar inside. There's the wire in there. You can see I've unpicked it a little bit. It was cable tied up over here, so I've got enough length on it, and there's a bar inside here which I can cable tie it to, so that is absolutely perfect. So that is going to be a lot neater and a lot safer as well, which means it'll never get caught on the wheel again. We may still have to glue the back section of it obviously under here where it comes through to go through the hole, but at least it's got less travel to go obviously to get to where it needs to go. Let's carry on and get this done. Okay, another little update. I've got the cable run down this inner rail in here now, and that's all cable tied on, so that is all nice and neat in there. It comes through the hole, and I'm still not happy with gluing it on because obviously it's sort of a bit of sort of Heath Robinson as far as if it comes off then it's dangling down. So what I'm actually going to do is I found a piece of this wiring conduit, which is actually off of some an old stereo install I did years ago, and I found I've got some copper nickel brake pipe. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut a piece of this copper nickel to go from the hole up to the back of the indicator. That is rigid enough to hold the cable up and out the way with a nice curve in it. That and the wiring is going to go inside this casing, cable tie it all together, and that should hold it in the correct shape out the way without any glue required. And obviously if you need to take it off any point, all you've got to do is cut the cable tie. So that is the plan. I'm going to get a piece of this cut, get it measured, get it cut obviously, feed it through and see how it works out. Hopefully the end of this will be big enough to get this and the wiring through. That's my hope. So let's see how we get on. If it isn't big enough, then we can still use the brake pipe, but obviously it will just be on show more on the outside of the wiring. I mean, this bit actually here has got a sleeve on it anyway, so from there upwards it's protected. So what I may do, actually thinking about it, is I may, if the sleeving isn't big enough, which it looks like it's not going to be because it's got this ballast resistor here, I will make the bit of brake pipe the right shape, and then we could actually black tape it with electrical tape to the wiring so that it holds it in the correct position, and that should do the same thing. And obviously then none of it will be on show, then it'll just be a black wire with a nice curve in it running down to there, and it can never hit the wheel anymore, because even hanging down like that it can't hit the wheel. So that is great. Let's crack on. Rightio, as you can see there now, I've got that side repeater stuck back on the wing. Use some 3M VHB tape, which is very high bond, so that should keep that stuck on there okay. Now I've got the piece of, I should show you, let me put the camera down here and I'll show you what I'm doing. There's a plane going over, so hopefully you can still hear me alright. Right, I've got the piece of copper, as you can see. That is sort of bent to shape, and I'm going to thread all that into the casing of the wiring just there, like that. Thread all that all the way up so that it hits the back, and then when that attaches into the back of the wing now, it will sit up like that. Now I'm going to cable tie it at each end, and I'm going to tape it around as well, so that will hold that nice and up and out of the way without having to glue it to the arch, which is what I was going for. So that should do the job really well. So I'm going to get that cable tied together, get that taped up, and then I'll come back to you and show you what it looks like. Let's carry on. Right, I've modified the design slightly. As you can see, this is the one I first made. Now I taped this in and it worked, but it was still a bit sort of floppy in around here. So what I've done now is I've made a longer version which goes through the hole and hooks around the bar inside the engine bay to give it some support, and then I'm going to curl that right round onto the bar a bit more once it's in place, and maybe put a cable tie around that as well, because that will then hold that in position, so it's actually got something to hold to, because before this end didn't have anything to hold it because it wasn't fixed to anything, whereas this end obviously is in the indicator, so that end was still. So I'm hoping I want to get that put in, and I'll cable tie it and see what it, or tape it rather, and see what it does, and I'll come back to you and show you what it's like. Let's carry on. Right, I've surprised myself with this. It's actually come out really well. Now you can see that now, that's nice and strong. It's not going to go anywhere. It's got a little bit of movement, but that's fine. And what I've actually done is I've run it through there, and I'll show you on the top side in the engine bay. I've run it round that cross member in the engine bay, and then I've actually put a little kick in it and put a Jubilee clip around it, so that the heat won't affect any cable ties or tape, and it's nice and strong. That should do the job very nicely indeed. It is a nice mechanical fix. So now all I've got to do is I've put a cable tie at this end already up the top here. I've got to tape this up, obviously make sure that that's all protected, because obviously it's right where the wheel is, and put a cable tie probably down here as well, just to hold that to the well, it won't need to because the tape will hold it to the Cooper nickel, but I will probably put a cable tie there as well, just to be on the double safe side. And that is that side, job done. And all we've got to do is do it all again on the other side. Let's carry on. Right, there we go, that is all taped up, cable tied up, nice and strong, and that should be a good fix for that. And obviously you can still get the indicator bulb out if you should want to, when it will eventually go. So yeah, that is all good. So now we've got to do exactly the same on the other side. I know it's a bit looks a bit sort of Heath Robinson, but it's actually worked quite well. And the good thing about that Cooper nickel is it won't rot, because obviously it's designed to be underneath the car unprotected. So, and obviously this car's probably not going to get used much in the rain anyway. So that is top banana. Let's carry on and get the other side done. Right, as you can see, we're on the other side of the car now, and this is the side that Aaron had a problem with when the wire dropped down and dragged on the wheel. Now I've just checked it, and the side of Pt6 isn't actually working at all on this side even now. So I've just cut this mess out of the wiring, all corroded crimps and everything else where it's been repaired before, and I've reconnected these two. I've just bared the ends of these wires and touched them on the bit of loom that's left that I can't find at the moment, that's got the bulb on it. Where have I put that? Around here somewhere. There it is. So that's the bit of loom that's left with the bulb on it, and it does work fine. So I need to actually elongate these wires anyway, because I've not got enough wiring on this harness on this side to do the same job as I did on the other side. So I'm going to whip these two air filters off to give me a bit more room, and then I can drill the hole in the same place as the other side, extend the wiring through, and then obviously we can get a working indicator again. That's the plan, and obviously get it all neat and up and out of the way. I'll come back to you in a minute. Rightio, as you can see there now, I've got the hole drilled in the inner wing. I've got two new wires. I've left them connected to the reels at the moment because I don't know how long they need to be. Got them poked through the hole, and I've got them soldered onto the original wire in here. Got some heat shrink ready to go over the top, so that will be nice and protected. And obviously then we can tape all that up. Now unfortunately not the same colour wires, obviously I've got red and black, the car's got green and black, so it's just one of those things. But anyway, we're going to tape that up so you won't see it anyway. So I'm going to re-jig the wiring so that it's on that bar inside here again, same as I did on the other side. Now they're soldered together, and then we can get it threaded through, to the point where I know how long it's got to be, cut it off, solder that onto the other piece of wiring that I showed you a minute ago with the bulb on the end of it, and then we can get the piece of copper nickel brake pipe bent up so that obviously it holds it up in the arch, same as the other side. Get it all cable tied together and Jubilee clipped onto that bar. There is a bar on this side as well, you can just about see it in there. There's not as much room, but obviously it's still fairly easy, so that's all good. I'm going to carry on with this and I'll come back to you in a minute. There we go, that is the other side all done. As you can see, nice and neat up in the arch there, all taped up, cable tied up, job done. And I don't know if you've been able to see in here, but I've clamped it onto the bar as well. You can just see the Jubilee clip and the brake pipe coming through and wrapped around and clamped on, so that is all nice and strong. So next thing I've got to do is have a quick look at the rear light, because one of the bulbs on the indicator at the back has stopped working. So I'm just going to pop this rear cover off here, make sure that bulb's seated properly in the holder and get that working, and then that should be the indicator sorted. Top banana. Rightio, having changed the bulb on the back, it has made absolutely no difference at all, which is highly expected with cars like this, I guess. And on closer inspection, I've gone under here and found that the wiring is pulled out the plug. Whether this is from when I loosened the light or whatever else. I initially had one wire that snapped off due to corrosion, and having undone the plug, another one's pulled out as well. So I need to get this wiring sorted out, and then hopefully that is going to be the resolution to the issue of not having an indicator on whatever this other wire does now that I've probably not got. So I'm going to get this, I'm going to get the pins, get this multi-plug. I don't think I've actually got any of these pins, so I'm going to have to get a bit inventive with how I'm going to repair this. But hopefully we can get it sorted out and get it working. I'll come back to you in a minute. Right, the first wire that had come off was this red wire, or the second one that came off was this red one. Now that had just pulled out, so I've took the pin out of there, which is this one in the corner here, and I've re-crimped that back on to the original end. Effectively it just pulled through, so that is now on there nice and tight back in the connector. Now this one, the end had completely snapped off of it and corroded. There's the end of it, what was left of it, and I've managed to get the rest of the pin out of the plug, which is that bit there, and I'm going to try and crimp what's left of the end of that back on the end of this wire, and hopefully it'll still reach the other end, because this end is also corroded as well, and the little collar that fits over the top of it is seen better days, as you can see by that. So I'm going to try and see if it will make a connection. If it won't, then I'm going to have to come up with something else. But yeah, I'm going to try that and I'll come back to you in a second. Right, what I've come up with here, as you can see, is I've actually hardwired in the indicator now. I've soldered it and heat shrunk it with a little jumper wire in between to make it a bit longer. This plug is really corroded inside to the point where this is the other pin that pulled out, which I reconnected to the end of that terminal, which is fine. But now the other end has snapped off inside this end of the plug, so I'm going to have to cut and solder this one as well. I haven't got any of these connectors, and I've actually got an MOT booked on this thing, so I need to get this sorted and done. So it's not ideal, because obviously if you wanted it to take the light out at any point you have to cut the wires, but obviously I'm not going to take the light out, so I don't need to do that, so that's alright. Obviously in the future, if I want to come back and put proper connectors back on the end, if I can get some online in future, I can always come back and just cut the wires again and reconnect them through the plug. But for the minute I'm going to have to cut these two off that are connected together, solder a little jumper wire onto that one as well, and then connect it up to this one, because at the moment I've got no side light. It just kept flicking on and off, and obviously I couldn't work out why, and then obviously I had a little pull on the wires and that one came out in pieces. So yeah, that you can just see it in the background there. That is all that's left of it. Hang on a second, I'm trying to get to focus. The half the connector's in the plug still and half of it's on the wiring. So right, I'm going to get that one cut and soldered, heat shrink it the same as the other one, and that should be a good job, and it'll be sealed in. Let's carry on. Right, as you can see now, I've got the other light cluster back off again. I had a bit of an issue with this. Put this indicator on, rear one wasn't working either, so I was like, oh, here we go again. Anyway, it turns out the bulb holder had all corroded inside, So I took the bulb out, cleaned it all out with a bit of sandpaper. That is now working, as long with the side light on that side, which has also had the same problem. However, we haven't got any brake lights at the moment. I don't know why, and I haven't got a reverse light. Now, having investigated the reverse light a little bit, I found the dreaded Scotch lock. Can't stand these things, they're absolutely rubbish. And if you look in here, try not to get bars on the screen, sorry, the wire that it was connected to is completely disintegrated inside it, so there's no end left on that at all, and it was connected to that one there. You can see it's got a little cut in it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run a blade around that, cut a little section of the casing off of it, and I'm actually going to solder that to it, and then that will be a permanent fix, and it won't have to worry about it corroding again, hopefully, or at least not for a very long while anyway. So I'm going to get that done. Hopefully that will sort the reverse light out. Then I've got to find out why the brake lights aren't working. I'm assuming because both aren't working, it's going to be something to do with the switch on the pedal. So we'll have a little look and see what's going on in a minute. I'll come back to you in a sec. Right, as you can see there now, that is all soldered in, and I've put the cable conduit over it as well, so it's nice and protected from the stuff fall splashing off the wheel, because there was nothing over those wires before, they were just bare wires. So that is done. I've also done this side now as well. That is complete with the sheathing over it as well. You can see that there, nice and neat. That looks really good. The brake lights are now working. That turned out to be a corroded terminal on the switch on the foot pedal, so that is sorted. And I've changed that headlight because that wasn't working either. Now the van headlights are the same, so I was very lucky. There's the one out at the Westfield, which is all gone cloudy, and I had obviously two for the van. Now unfortunately one of them, this one over here, had exactly the same problem as the one on the Westfield. It had main beam side light but no dip beam, so that one's going in the bin as well. So I need to get some new headlights for the van now, because I've used my one last remaining headlight on the front of the Westfield. So that is all good, so that's sorted. So all the indicators are working, brake lights are working, side lights are working, headlights are all working. So in theory we should be okay for an MOT. So only time will tell on that side of things, but we are finally getting there as far as getting it on the road. I want to get these light covers put back on again, get this rear cover put back in, and then we should be somewhere near it. Let's carry on. Right, little update for you. I've got the rear light clusters back on, reverse light lens back on, got this panel tray bolted in with the eyelets for the seat belt harnesses, so they're on there now as well. I still need to put a couple of extra bolts in these corners because it is a bit flappy, as you can see. So I'm going to do that at some point, but obviously we'll worry about that later. I've fitted the interior mirror, rear view mirror, restuck that back on the windscreen because that had fallen off. And we come to the next problem, which is the battery. Now this is the battery that came out of the car. I went to Euros and bought another one, exactly the same, 055, as you can see on the top there, 055, 055, but the new one is wider, typical. So I've had to do a little bit of modification. As you can see, the battery tray is riveted in there, it's made of alley. So I've had to cut down one side of it and flatten that side out to allow the battery to sit in there properly flat. Now the next problem I've got is this clamp. I don't actually know how it was clamping the battery down, because on the old one there's no ridge on the bottom of it, and on the new one there's no ridge on the bottom of it. So what me and Mrs. MEC-TEC have come up with is I'm going to get a piece of old ratchet strap that I've got, which is obviously really strong, and we're going to I'm going to rivet it through underneath the battery in the middle of the tray there. It will wrap over the back of the battery. Now I'm going to put a hole in it with two big washers and a bolt, and bolt it through this hole at the front or underneath this clamp, one of the two, and that should hold it nice and secure. So that is the plan. So I'll get this started off and I'll come back to you in a minute. Right, that is the ratchet strap now riveted on, nice and secure, and the new battery will sit on straight over the top like that. So you've got the weight of the battery on there as well. Once I get the clamp out of the way, that is, there we go. That will then wrap over the top, and then it will tie down to that bolt or that bracket there. Not sure how I'm going to do that bit yet, but it will be somewhere or another. So that should be lovely and secure. I'll come back to you once I've got a bit more progress. Right, the battery modification is complete, as you can see. Ratchet strap's doing its job, it's nice and secure, not going anywhere. It's clamped down there with the original clamp turned up the other way, and it goes through the strap, so it can't pull through. and then obviously it goes under the battery at the back there and then rivets through to the body. I've got it sitting on little yellow foam pads because it was a little bit uneven as far as where the rivet was in the middle of the battery, so that's sorted now. Mrs. MEC-TEC's been helping me out. She's weedy at the moment. Unfortunately I had to take the nose cone off again, but only to put the grill back in, which Mrs. MEC-TEC helped me with as well. So there you go, there's the grill back in there now as well. So that looks really, really good. I'm well chuffed with that. Nice against the red. So last job I think, or next job I should say, is to get this polished. So obviously you've seen a half and half on the bonnet, so I don't need to do that part of it again. So I'm just going to crack on and get this polished, and that can go back on, and we should be hopefully somewhere near ready for an MOT. Woo! Rightio, next job on the Westfield is to sort out this rear cover. Now I've took out the two eyelet rings again because that was holding it down, and I've actually drilled a hole in each corner to bolt the corners down, because when these eyelets were bolted down it was making this end flip up and it was obviously rattling up and down, so that was no good. So I'm going to take that out now, that tray, and we're going to put a riv nut in the bottom underneath. See if I can get this out while I'm on camera. Hang on a second. There we go. So hopefully my holes will have gone through. Yep, they've gone through the lower piece okay, so that's fine. So now we're going to drill out these holes slightly bigger. I'm going to use a stepper drill for that. That one's a little bit close to the edge, but not much we can do about that. But there we go, it should work okay. So I want to get the stepper drill out, get it drilled out, and then I'll show you the tool I'm going to use, which is a riv nut tool. This is basically like a rivet with a threaded centre. We'll get two of those put in, and that should hold it secure. I'll come back to you in a second. Right, as you can see, I've drilled out that hole bigger now, so it allows the riv nut to fit in. There you can see that's the riv nut. It's basically like a rivet, as I said, with a threaded centre. This is the tool. You can get different types, but this is the one I've got. And basically you wind the thread. You've got different ends that can go in here, so you can have different size riv nuts. This is an M8. You wind it on the end like that, put it in the hole, squeeze it up. Hopefully don't go too mad with it, because obviously it's only going into fiberglass. And then you unwind it, and that gives you a threaded insert to then obviously bolt the top cover into. There we go, just like that. You can see that in there now. Put the tripod up so you can see that is now in there, and obviously that allows us to then obviously thread the nut through to the, to show you again on this side, just so you can see it again for those of you who haven't seen one of these before. There are sort of handheld ones of these you can get as well, which is like the same as a hand riveter, but these ones, because they've got bigger arms on them to hold on to, obviously it's a lot easier. So that's threaded on the end there. Just put it in the hole, squeeze them up, go too mad with it, just so they go all the way home. Unwind it again, and that's it. That's all there is to it. There's two riv nuts put in. So now we can get this cover put back in the hole, get it bolted down on each corner, and get the eyelets back in, and we should be job to good. Lovely jubbly, let's carry on. Right, I've just made up these two little spacers, because the reason this was sitting up at the back edge was because there's actually a gap in between the fiberglass and the metal fixing underneath, and it was pulling it down too far this side, and it was making that back side, that side, flip upwards. So I want to put these in between, bolt it down, that should do the job. I'll get these in and see how we get on. Let's crack on. Okay, so in the last bit of time lapse you would have seen me fitting that rear cover, the 2 eyelets and the seat belts. That was the final job before I had this booked in for an MOT. That was a few days ago now. So the big question is, did it pass its first MOT in over 7 years? Well, of course it passed. Did you expect anything less? Well, maybe you did actually, but anyway. Clean bill of health. Emissions passed. Top banana is all I'm going to say to that. That is absolutely superb. So now, in fact, I have been using it. I was going to say now I can use it, but I have been using it and I've done about 50 miles on it so far, which is probably the longest journey it's done for however many years, so I don't know. But yeah, absolutely superb. So there are other jobs to do on it still, but at least now I can use it at the same time. You will notice in the background I've got the roof half fitted. I need to sort that out next because that is obviously quite a big thing to have a bit of weather protection if I'm going out in it somewhere sort of fairly longer distance or whatever else. I don't want to be caught out without a roof, so we'll sort that out in a future episode. If you want to look me up on Instagram, I've got MEC_TEC 1985, and I have got Facebook MEC-TEC for little sneak peeks during the week of what I'm up to. If you do like what you see and you like projects like this, or the freewheel van, or the Puma, or the Capri, or the DeLorean, or any of the others that I've had on the channel in the past, maybe consider hitting that subscribe button down there and ring a little notification bell. That'll tell you every time I upload a video, which is usually every Friday at 6. And all it is left for me to say is thank you very much for watching, and if you want to join me soon for more automotive adventures, I'll see you again next time. Cheers guys.